bit later in the show. But first, internet addiction. A recent Toronto Star series shows that the problem of internet addiction is more common than we might think. In fact, studies show that as much as 18.5% of the US population is addicted to the internet. Is the internet bad for us? How can we tell if we're addicted? And how do we make use of the internet without having it take over our lives? With me to discuss this subject is Dr. Shabir Ali, President of the Islamic Information Center. Brother Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Pleasure to be on.
Now, the statistics are staggering. They show that a third of Canadians use the internet before getting out of bed, and 50% right before falling to sleep. What do you think of those statistics?
Well, of course, those statistics seem to be, the large numbers seem to be framed by the question itself, because if you ask if the question is, have you ever used the internet before getting out of bed?
Mm-hmm.
And the number of people who say yes, but we don't know how many times.
Mm-hmm.
But it is true, though, that people are using the internet now more than ever before. And to an extent that raises alarm bells about the effect this will have on the brain itself and on the behaviors and the stress levels of individuals.
Mm-hmm. Of course, we don't want to be alarmist here. I mean, people have said with any new technology, people have raised alarm bells and said, well, what is the world coming to? What's going to happen? How is this going to change us? But the internet is more pervasive and is more difficult to avoid than many other technologies in the past.
Yes, like with every other previous challenge, we will adapt. We will, eventually things will smooth out, but what will be the cost? What are the changes that we can expect? Some books that have been written about this, for example, the book entitled The Brain That Changes Itself, show that the use of the internet does actually have an effect on us. You see, if you're reading a book, then you are forced to think about one thing at a time, one idea at a time, and then your thoughts go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Your synthesis of ideas, your deep analysis, your deep thought is just more prominent here. Whereas on the internet, what tends to happen is that you're reading an article that is linked to several other articles, and before you can finish the one, you're enticed to click to the link to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Click on the link to the other one. So then you're looking quickly at a wide variety of articles without thinking of any one of them in depth. And that, if one becomes habituated to doing it this way, then the capacity for deep thought it becomes minimized.
So it shortens one's concentration.
Exactly.
And focus.
Yes. And in fact, it is discovered that the brain adapts very quickly to this new kind of stimulus.
Mm-hmm.
And so if one is now become habituated to the internet use, then one becomes now accustomed to multitasking, which the researchers say the brain is not actually very good at. But in any case, this multitasking has the downside of reducing our deep thought and our ability to analyze in depth.
And I guess this multitasking also reduces our ability to complete any one task at any given time.
Yes. So we become, a sort of creature that is constantly distracted and needs that distraction. One of the problems that has been pointed out in some of these studies is with regards to our constant use of emails or other kinds
Texting,
of messaging systems. Yes. So what has been said is that if you send out a message, then your stress level somewhat increases while you're waiting for the response. And this is why people go checking their phones regularly, because they're looking for that response. Because once they get that response, then there's a sense of satisfaction after that period of stressing out over not receiving the response. But then, having received this response and having fulfilled that craving for the response, now you send out another message. and then you're craving the response again. So this becomes a continuous stress or a source of stress for the individual.
They've also, the Toronto Star series also raises the question of social interaction and communication skills and how those are affected by social media, by the internet. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, well, the point raised is that when we interact with each other in a face-to-face interaction, there is so much going on that is very subtle. There are facial expressions, and we're reading faces, we're understanding deep emotions from outward appearances and so on. But in an electronic sort of communication, whether by email or texting or so on, we don't have that all of this phenomena to deal with. We're just dealing with the text one at a time. And it is thought, or it was found actually from some studies, that those who were more accustomed to communicating electronically did report that they have difficulty eventually in face-to-face communications. They feel that their peers do not like them and so on, and this may be related to the fact that they're losing their social skills at this level of physical face-to-face communication.
Some people have many interactions online, but not many, in real life, interacting with people on a daily basis.
Yes, and so many who have studied the issue would prescribe many solutions, and among the solutions is that one should get out there and do stuff and interact with people more. Join clubs, volunteer to do something so that you have some activity away from the computer.
Have hobbies, people say.
Exactly, and if you don't have one, find one, and develop one.
So how do we tell if we're addicted? Because many of us do use the internet very heavily in this age. It's hard to get away from it. How does one diagnose oneself?
It's not easy, but if as a general rule, addictions are detected when whatever it is that you're heavily involved with, it starts to affect other things that are important to you. So it's important to you to be at work at a certain time, but your addiction to this other thing is keeping you from being there at the right time. So it's stopping you from fulfilling your responsibilities. The Quran, in speaking about drinking and gambling, does actually hint at this, because it says that Satan uses these things to distract you from the remembrance of God. And of course, we know that the remembrance of God is linked to the awareness of our own self and our own well-being as well. Elsewhere in the Quran, we read that they have forgotten God, and God has caused them to forget themselves. So it so happens that when one is addicted, whether to the internet or something else, that one forgets one's prayers, one forgets God, and as an extension of that, one even forgets one's own responsibility. In fact,
so Islamically speaking, then what you're suggesting is that internet addiction could be considered a vice, then?
Well, it is a vice. Addiction to almost anything is a vice, because the Quran speaks of moderation in doing things. Even good things should be done in moderation. Even prayer should be done in moderation. Muslims are not encouraged to pray continuously. If you pray continuously, then even the flavor of the prayer is lost, because prayer has a certain special characteristic about it. You are doing something else, and then you come to the prayer, and you feel a sort of connection with God. But if you continue doing this, then you don't feel the same effect of the prayer anymore. So even that flavor of the prayer is lost. But more so to the core of the problem here, if you just focus on this one thing, then you neglect so many other areas of life. And everything is important to form the individual as a holistic entity. You need some prayer, you need some recreation, you need some exercise, you need some interaction with family and friends, you need some hobbies, some things to take your mind off of the things that normally would stress you out. You're doing something that does not really have a time limit. It does not have a deadline to meet. You're just enjoying yourself, but that too within moderation and with due limits.
All right, thank you for that, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break. When we return, who is a Muslim?